My name is McAleese, I'm the Programme Director here, and thank you for coming on this tour. It's going to be really, really informal. You can drop in and out whenever you want, you can go and get a drink whenever you want, and I've got some information about the show here if you want to pick up some of that. Maybe you want to pass that around. I also want to introduce my colleague John Heffernan, who is the co-curator of this entire project. For those of you who haven't been to Grand Union before, we're a gallery and studio space, and we've been here in Birmingham for the past 10 years. This is our 10-year anniversary this year. And what we really like to do within our programme is to commission brand new work. And we were really fortunate to work with John, who's based in Humber Street Gallery in Hull, to commission the artist Jamie Crewe to make a much more expansive and better resourced new body of work that we could kind of pair across two spaces. So last month we opened the show in Hull, and we're a month into the show here, and so I was really lucky to be in Hull last month, and I did a tour, so I'm going to defer to John for a lot of the tour tonight. But also, yeah, like I said, it's really chilled out, so if you want to ask questions, feel free to. Also, I should let you know that we're recording this tonight, so if any of you don't want to be in the video, just let us know. It might just be me for loads of this. We're going to put some of it on social media. We're trying this thing out. So, yeah, I guess I should begin by talking a little bit about Jamie Crewe, who's the artist whose show that we're standing in right now. And the one thing I should say is that Jamie identifies as trans, so they use the they and their pronouns, so that's what we'll be referring to the whole way through this kind of talk. We've been really fortunate to work with Jamie. We've had conversations over the past couple of years. And this is kind of how we tend to work at Grand Union, and you do at Humber Street as well. We have this conversation for a really long period of time. It's very much back and forth between the organisation and the artist that we're working with, and we try to develop something very much in collaboration. And so it's been a long time that we've been working on this, and I guess this is quite, like I said, an expansive body of work. So we've commissioned 2 new video works, a whole body of ceramics, some new writing, and publications that you can take away, and we have lots of events that are coming up as well. We have different queer reading groups that we're running. We have a digital publication that you'll be able to access online. We're going to have an evening of film screenings that Jamie has selected. Yeah. So maybe I'll hand over to you, John, and if you want to start talking a little bit about the project.
Yeah. Of course, thank you. Hi everyone, it's really nice to be here. I always do, whenever I'm speaking in public, sometimes I get really excited and go super, super fast. And that is not very good when you've got a super strong Scottish accent. So if that happens, just, make that known to me, and I'll try and slow down the pace a little bit. So I get excited when I talk about artwork sometimes. So yeah, my name's John Heffernan. I'm the senior curator of Humber Street Gallery in Hull. It's a relatively new institution. It's come out of the City of Culture, set up as a pop-up space. And then I came in shortly after that to run it as a more permanent space. And yeah, we, like Kim mentioned, we share quite a lot of support initiatives when it comes to the commissioning of new work. And yeah, so Jamie was, I guess Jamie's been on a trajectory with their career that we wanted to get behind and find a way to support this new project. Yeah, so I'm going to try and introduce some of the work specifically and trying to share some of the kind of thoughts behind it all. But I, similarly to Kim, would rather this be a conversation rather than listening to me, because I think curators are really boring most of the time, and Kim especially. But I often find this more useful if people want to get involved and have a chat. But don't feel obliged, you're not here to be on point or whatever. So I guess I'll just how should we start we'll talk about the publication.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to? Yeah.
So, yeah, this exhibition, like a lot of the research and a lot of the work has kind of come from one really key piece of text, an historic piece of literature that was written in 1928, called The Well of Loneliness, and it's written by an incredible writer called Radclyffe Hall, and it was really controversial at the time. So if you think about the landscape at that time, it was 1928. Radclyffe Hall is like a very prominent queer female writer, and it was one of the first times that you, within The Well of Loneliness, had a very strong female character who was in same-sex relationships. Yeah, extremely controversial. It was banned. Radclyffe Hall was accused of, well, basically she was, she went into a trial and yeah, the book wasn't in circulation for a really, really long time, so you just couldn't get your hands on it. You know, you couldn't have representations of like same-sex relationships at all. And this was a really important touchstone for Jamie because of some of the content within that. But I think whenever Jamie was reading it a couple of years ago, whenever they were looking at it, and if you think about it in a contemporary moment, you could read that main character, Stephen Gordon, the protagonist, as, rather than being a queer woman, as a trans man. So a lot of the project has kind of come from contemporary readings of the novel and how we understand queer theory at the moment, but also, and I think most importantly, like it's a really personal novel. It's a really tragic novel. If any of you have ever read it, it's absolutely brutal, like relentless from start to end. And it's been, you know, it's been called the lesbian Bible. Like, if you're a queer woman, you've probably read that book. And also, you know, whilst it's very brutal, there is like a celebration of same-sex relationships within that. So yeah, Jamie, I think they operate from a place where they always use historic literature, and like writing is really important in the practice, and fiction is really important in the practice. So that's kind of where it all starts from.
Yeah. So in terms of the body of work, so yeah, of course, Jamie always really intelligently sort of uses some form of literature as a starting point to create a reflection on that subject matter. But in this instance, yeah, so I suppose the one thing that I really want to talk about at the beginning is this term invert, which is used throughout the Well of Loneliness. And Jamie really picked up on the sense of the invert. It was a term used at that time to describe a queer person. And of course it's not a very lovely term, the term of queer person, but it was used. And Jamie, in a way, I feel Jamie really sensitively almost inverted the purpose or meaning behind that word. And they did that by creating a sister exhibition. So this thing about two exhibitions on at the same time with inverted bodies of work. Although they have a relationship, and Jamie refers to that as a sort of sisterhood, they have a lot of differences. And so we have a similar colour palette in Humber Street Gallery. We have a similar setup to the sort of exhibition display, a similar suite of works when it comes to the ceramics that are on the wall there in publication and video work, but essentially they're inverted, so that they're similar but different. Yeah, so the first thing you experience when you come in is that red light, and again, I'll probably mention The Well of Loneliness like a million times tonight because it's so rooted in all of these works. But one of the key sort of things that's picked up is this sort of sense of this genealogy, or this like family, aristocratic sort of thing, and things that might be associated with those things like grand homes and fox hunting and things like that are really associated throughout the novel. And Jamie wanted to pick up on that blood red, that genealogy, but also the spilling of blood that's done through fox hunting, and also the almost like, maybe it's not spilling of blood of queer people, but the sort of what's that word I'm looking for? the displacement of queer people who often end up in different places, and there was that sort of thing as well. Jamie also brings in quite a lot of their own personal experiences into their work, in particular this body of work, and one of the things they talk about in the video piece is an experience they had when they were at school. And Jamie grew up in Derbyshire, where you know, fox hunting does happen, and they talked about this memory of being at school where they could smell the burning of fox hair, and how that relates to decay and blood and so on. So the colour, the palette really resonates through everything, both in the publication and the experience that you come into. But Jamie also talked about it as like a palette cleanser, or sort of sorbet as soon as you come in, to sort of clear your associations with anything else that you've experienced outside, so that as soon as you walk in, you're sort of, oh, this is a different experience, you know. So yeah, so there's that. Hello, come in. You're more than welcome.
Do you know what I've realised? We haven't given a summary of the novel. Has anyone read it? Do you know a little bit about it? I'm going to do a really quick one because we're talking about that.
Yeah, of course.
Really quick summary of the Well of Loneliness. Stephen Gordon lives in this really fancy kind of manor house. The Gordon family, very aristocratic, has a mother, has a father. She grows up and she is kind of seen as an invert, and that's the word, which is the term we would not use now, but the term that was used at the time. Her father dies, who loved her. Her mother realises she's an invert and just kind of throws her out of the family home. So all of this aristocratic, the things that she was meant to inherit because she was an aristocratic woman, because she was someone who had privilege, she was just thrown out of that. So she kind of made her way across Europe. She did all right. She had a few different relationships, but really she was just, all she ever wanted was to be home, and all she ever wanted was to be accepted and to have what was truly hers, which was her blood right. And she can never get that because of her queerness. And then she's in a very loving relationship, and in the end rejects her lover, and it just, I'm not going to spoil the ending, but a lot of the book is about what you feel like you're entitled to, and the place that you're from, and how you have that love and those ties to that place, but actually sometimes that place and those people and those that are your family and your blood ties, they just reject you. And a lot of that has to do with identity that is not necessarily chosen. So I think Jamie related to a lot of that book, and related a lot of kind of their growing up, their relationship to their home, their relationship to their family, their relationship to the people in their hometown. There's some sort of commonalities between
Absolutely.
that.
I mean, I think that segues really beautifully into the video as well, that are one of the two videos. So there's two videos that you see as you come in. The smaller one is really short duration, it's just a couple of minutes, and then there's the larger display, which is about 30 minutes long. And so we'll start with the larger piece. It's called Morton Beadle's Abyss, and those Jamie titled those works. They're all sort of in quotations, and they're quoted from the Well of Loneliness. So Morton, firstly, is the name of the place where Stephen Gordon is from. That's where Radclyffe Hall is in the novel. There's also Beadles. So there's another character in the novel who's from Scotland, is it? But it's another queer person from an aristocratic sort of family, but also talks about their sort of displacement from their privilege, their and aristocratic rights or whatever because of their queerness. And then Abyss, it's also used in the novel, but that sort of sense of finishing and opening, I guess. But yeah, so the title of it's quite smart for me, but basically the film, it was filmed downstairs, so there's an amazing place called, what's it called again? Modern Clay. So Jamie filmed the video work down there over a course of a week, and it involved a significant group of people who came together to create a well dressing. So again, a well dressing. I mean, God, it's so loaded. This work, it like blows my mind sometimes. So I hope I'm not like totally overwhelming anyone because it is quite complex. But basically, the work is the video piece is based on a group of people, and it's a group of queer people, not exclusively, but a lot of people who identify as queer having a conversation whilst creating this well dressing. Now, well dressing is a tradition. It's a pagan tradition that was sort of reappropriated in the Victorian era, and it was relatively common as a practice around Derbyshire and those areas around there. It was Jamie participated in well dressings, or their family participated in well dressings when Jamie was growing up in the area, but it was practiced by select groups that were associated with the church or the Women's Institute, or sort of groups that might not have a sense of inclusivity for someone questioning their own gender or feeling different. So the process of a well dressing is laid out in the film really, but it's large slabs of clay that are collectively decorated to celebrate a particular period of the year. It's a springtime tradition, and it's it's associated with sort of fertility and water and new crops and all that sort of thing. But what the well dressing is about is not really important in this context. It's more that who's doing it and why that is another activity that excluded Jamie from this experience. So Jamie, again, sort of that thing, invert, not to refer to an individual, but to refer to a sort of, the term in a different way, wanted to invert that tradition. So by bringing out this group of queer people together to have a conversation, to use different types of imagery than what might have been used by the Women's Institute or whatever. So it was a really magnificent week, spent downstairs, and Jamie invited a couple of filmmakers in to create that work alongside their direction. And Jamie, I guess, sort of facilitated a lot of conversation and throughout that time, and Jamie has an enormous vast knowledge about queer history as well, not just from loneliness but the broader spectrum of it. So there's quite a lot of references that came out in that to certain figures in queer history, which we'll talk about more in a bit. Shall I shut up for a minute? Because that was just a lot of words out my mouth.
No, I think it's important to mention that this idea of family and blood and who you belong to and what brings you together. And for a lot of people it is family, and for a lot of people like family reject you, and for a lot of people you're not welcome in a certain place. And Jamie really wanted to bring together this particular group of people to create something that felt really important to them. And so the well dressing and those clay slabs that we made that you'll see in the video, they are kind of documenting really important things for Jamie as an individual. So yeah, moments from queer history, like different scenes from the novel, because growing up in Derbyshire, they weren't able to participate in anything like that, so they wanted to create something that was very much about bringing these really important group of people together that they love, but to kind of focus on and highlight different histories that you might not necessarily see.
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting as well about the video is some members of Jamie's family participated in the filming of that day, and actually they came up with a sense of feeling rejected and excluded by some people, so that was interesting that came out. But yeah, what else to say about the film? Everyone who's participated in the film, their names are erased, they're not mentioned, and there's a soundtrack that plays over that as well that Jamie composed themselves.
Why are their names not? Why are their names not?
I guess the film, I don't know an exact, I can't remember if Jamie ever spoke explicitly.
We talked about focusing on like the making process and certain things were anonymised. So we were talking about particular individuals where there was like maybe a political history of like, she wouldn't let me participate in the well dressings and she always took control. And then there were some things that were quite personal to Jamie, like emotional things whenever they were growing up, and they were like, I don't feel comfortable necessarily including that. But yeah, I suppose it's more the celebration of this making process as well.
Yeah.
And thinking about the materials.
They do talk about the group Radclyffe Hall. So Radclyffe Hall is a group of queer people who, they live now, they exist in Glasgow, and they are, a sort of critical group, I guess you refer to them, but they've termed themselves Radclyffe Hall, also in connection to the Well of Loneliness, but so they were involved in that as well. But yeah, do you mind talking about the smaller
second video? Yeah, so we've got a 30-minute video that runs on a loop, and then we've got a smaller one on the monitor, which is 2 minutes long. And Jamie always had the idea that they would always be interfering with one another, so they're in dialogue, but they're always, kind of clashing almost, and you can hear like different parts of the soundtrack. But as a very direct reference to the Well of Loneliness, there's this really key moment that Jamie wanted to focus on, which is in a Parisian nightclub. So Stephen Gordon is being like rejected from the family home, moved to Europe, finds themselves in Paris, traveling around Paris, and there's like one night that she's on a night out with all of her friends. And she's still really coming to terms with the fact that, just because she's queer and just because she has like certain romantic relationships, like why can't she have what she wants? And she doesn't necessarily identify in a positive way in terms of her sexuality. So she's in this nightclub, she's sitting down, and it's like the very end of the night, that point of the night where everything's just a bit messy. And
those are not my nights.
and she's sitting at a table, and she sees a man coming towards her, and this like particular point in the book is like his face is grey, he's drug-addled, he's disgusting, and Stephen can see him coming towards her, and he puts his hands on the table and he says in French, like myself, like my sister, and there's this inner kind of monologue of Stephen Gordon where she's like, I'm not related to you, I'm not your sister, I have nothing to do with you. Then she realises, well, actually, we're both queer people, and even though I don't want to identify with you, we are sisters and we are brothers, and she kind of refers back to him. But she has this flashback in the book of where she's been, as you do, as you're going hunting in your, aristocratic home, where a fox has been shot, and she goes over to the fox, and the fox is on the floor, and she sees the fox panting and dying, and as she's looking at this other particular character, she sees the fox just like gradually dying. So Jamie wanted to kind of have like a reenactment of that particular scene in the book, which was kind of pivotal for them. Like, we are together, we're in this together, but I don't want to be with you, but we are kind of, I guess it's to do with ties, isn't it? And like how people relate to one another, or like how you're bound.
That's right. I mean, it's also, that's really important, because it also, I guess there's this sort of sense of sisterhood or brotherhood or likeness that's brought into the film, it's brought into some of the ceramic pieces as well.
Yeah.
But again, it's a provocation perhaps, rather than an appropriate way of terming. I'll talk about the lovely printed material, which is, these are free, and there's loads of them, so you can take these if you visit the exhibition. Again, the colour red to resonate with what I mentioned earlier. Womanhood in brackets, so I get, again, quite a few of the titles in the work are sort of bracketed to give this sort of sense of like questioning. And this is quite, Jamie is a really exceptional sketchbook maker, and probably, you'd maybe agree, I think so. And these remind me of their sketchbook practice somehow, but it acts almost like a diary, it acts as a resource of collected material, so there's quite a few extracts in here from the Well of Loneliness, but there's also quite a strong first person narrative where Jamie describes experiences that relate to their relationships, the breakdown of relationships, again, circumstances in a queer person's livelihood that might be different, so that, yeah, it's from their experience. So part journal, part diary, part collage thing.
And the design of that publication is quite specific as well, because well, first of all, Jamie really wanted something that people could take away. We talked about like making a publication, and I felt really strongly that sometimes when you're in an exhibition context, not that it's ungenerous, but like to take something home with you and to have it in your own time, in your own space, and to digest it could be quite important. And they had so many different ideas for what they wanted to include. So there are like some snippets from The Well of Loneliness, because we don't really have any other text in here. There's like different drawings, but this is referencing, again, something I think that was very like of the time. So when the book came out in 1928, in 1929, there was a group of artists that came together to kind of protest against it, or like make fun of it, and they produced a publication much like this with lots of like drawings and writing. Lampooning is the word, but taking the piss out of it, because it was so controversial and like in protest. There was actually like a book made in response to The Well of Loneliness, and it looks exactly like this. So Jamie wanted to kind of use that format to reference that period of time and that literature as well.
So I'd love to just share a bit more on like that final collection of works, but is everyone okay? Like, we've got about 10 minutes more worth of patience in ourselves. Do we want to look at the works while talking about them? Or, yeah. So gather here.
Yeah. So there's lots of the works in the show reference one another. So we've taken the sound off, and I think we've pressed pause on the video over there. This is the actual clay, the fired clay from the well dressing. So what you'll see is like there are 3 massive slabs, and they all have like a very particular character, and that's what we've cut up and we've fired, and they're across the 2 spaces. So what you see in that video there in our hands of what we're actually making are here. It's very traditional in well dressing that the same slab of clay is used year upon year upon year upon year. But for Jamie, it was really, really important that we fired these and kind of played around with them. Mark in modern clay was really amazing, because we were like, can we put some flowers and some coffee beans onto some clay? Can we put that in the kiln? Is that all right? And he was like, yeah, we can try it out. But we had no idea what they were going to turn out like. And they're never meant to be fired, they're meant to be impermanent, and it's meant to be something which is a reference from that particular year in the time. But Jamie wanted to kind of capture these and keep them as they were. So they are a bit gnarly, like they're hard to read. You can see some of the, like that part, there's definitely coffee beans that have been used there. We use sesame seeds, we use loads of flowers that we got donated from many different people. You can see how colourful everything once was. And we've got the kind of remnants and the lasting kind of weird, changing, unglazed, strange objects here, but they all kind of have like a larger story or a larger narrative. So this half I know better because it's been living here for a month. But just to mention some of the different things that Jamie wanted to highlight. So this, I love this one. This one is a particular flyer from a nightclub in San Francisco from the late 80s, early 90s called Ollie's. And it's a lesbian S&M nightclub in like the Bay Area. And it was a flyer for a Valentine's Day disco. And it has a set of handcuffs that are heart-shaped, interlocking. So Jamie really loved this kind of image, and they would often have nights that would reference Radclyffe Hall in that particular place. This, I also really love this. Jamie had been reading a particular interview. I guess like if you're, because there's been so much of this exhibition and body of work that has been grounded in personal experience, and Jamie being a trans person, they really didn't want to foreground terse, which is the acronym stands for Trans Exclusionary Radical Feminists. They didn't want to make them like a feature or part of the show, but there is, to give a really glib and kind of like brief summary, there are a lot of feminists nowadays who don't recognise trans identity and don't recognise trans women as women. And there was this one particular interview with Jamie Crewe, who's obviously a really prominent, like wonderful figure who's done lots of incredible writing, but she's a TERF. So there, there's this one particular interview where she talks about a moment in like the early 90s where a trans woman came up to her and held her hand out and said, I really want to thank you for everything that you have done for us. And in the interview, the way it's transcribed, Jamie Crewe says, and her like hairy, knuckled like hand reached out for me, and I took my hand away. And she turned around to her. In response to her, she says, "I've done nothing for you. You're not one. You're not with me, or we're not together, or like, my feminism is not your feminism. I don't stand with you." It's a horrible, horrible interview, and it's a horrible moment. But so Jamie kind of wanted to represent like this figure of this hand reaching out in solidarity. I guess it's that moment we were talking about it earlier, like that moment in the video where the man comes up and says, "My sister,"
exactly.
And then Stephen Gordon is like, "I'm not with you, but actually we're together somehow, but maybe not by choice." So that's kind of a representation of that. The claddagh in the middle, I really wanted to have that because it's
why, Kim?
It's claddagh. I know, like I really wanted to have it. So it's an Irish. I need to get these references right. Now I'm forgetting. Stephen Gordon's mother in the book is Irish, so there are lots of Irish references, and so the claddagh is a very particular Irish symbol, and so you'll see loads of people in Birmingham wearing those Irish claddagh rings. And so you have a heart being held by two hands and then a crown on top, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, I should know this, it's for friendship, solidarity and love. But yeah. But there are these moments where there's like a lot of heartbreak and there's a lot of hurt. And there's a lot of rejection and there's a lot of like sadness within the well of loneliness, but I think one important thing for Jamie to kind of highlight, and it is called Love and Solidarity, the show, like we should talk about the title is Love and Solidarity, and that kind of comes from that comes from something which Jamie felt like they were saying a lot of the time, signing off emails, and this happens a lot within like activist circles as well. Rather than saying like goodbye to someone or best wishes, you'll write with love and solidarity. It's a kind of a refrain, but it's a really positive one. And so Jamie wanted to kind of highlight that love and solidarity. So this particular slab is like this beautiful moment of kind of like hope. So I'll read it out to you. I'll give you context. So it's an interview between an activist called Randy Wicker, who was really prominent. It was a massive figure within the gay liberation movement. So in the late 70s, early 80s, right through until he died, he was the person that was there, you know, when we had the first Pride. He was the person that was marching. He was a kind of middle-class white man, queer man, but very much at the forefront of activism. But also within these different movements, you always have different fractures, right? And when we think back to the beginning of gay liberation, you think back to the beginning of Pride, and you think back to the beginning of the Stonewall riots. The people who were at the forefront of that were trans women. Not only trans women, but trans women of colour. But then when you had the different Pride marches and the Pride celebrations, these middle-class white men did not want the trans women being like too vocal or kind of tainting this like very respectable kind of march that was happening. So Randy Wicker had a particular enemy in a woman called Sylvia Rivera, who was one of the most incredible women who fought her entire life. She's an American woman, she is trans, woman of colour, She dedicated her entire life to working with trans youth, with homeless people, and there's a really powerful video which we'll show on Jamie's kind of YouTube show reel of Sylvia Rivera on stage at Pride, saying, I've done everything for you, I've lost my job, I've been abused, I've been a sex worker for my whole, like pretty much my whole life. I've given everything to our freedom. I've given everything to like fighting for what I believe in, and yet you still won't let me be here. Like, fuck you, basically. It's a really aggressive, like it's a woman who's just, she's being rejected again. However, so Randy and her hated each other because she wasn't respectable enough. This is a slab with a text piece from an interview later on, where he's kind of memorializing her, and he says, oh God, it's really hard to read this. With all of these awful experiences that went on in her life, you would have thought that she would have just, as she grew older, would have become uglier and more twisted, and instead somehow she went through this roller coaster ride of tragedy and suddenly bloomed like a new rose of spring or something. And then he turns to her partner Julia Murray and then laughs and says, I should say an opium poppy. And then Julia, her partner, smiles. She was an addict for most of her life. And they actually later on in life became friends. They got past everything. He finally wised up. But so it's to kind of say that you know, in these desperate moments and desperate times, and things that we go through with one another, where there are fractures and where we kind of like disassociate from one another, there's actually like moments of hope, and there are moments of solidarity, and there are places in which we can support one another, and like the world out there again is brutal, like this book, but we're in it with each other if we just are all a little bit more kind and accepting. And yeah, so like seeing this every day is actually amazing to have in Grand Union and to think about that.